Did you know that tipping at least 15% to 20% for a sit-down meal is considered traditional etiquette? Well, according to experts, that's the norm. However, a recent survey conducted by the Pew Research Center reveals that many Americans disagree. The survey, which polled 11,945 U.S. adults, found that almost 1 in 5 people, or 18%, tip less than 15% for an average meal at a sit-down restaurant. Even more surprising, an additional 2% of people tip nothing at all. In contrast, only 37% of respondents said that 15% is their standard tip. Drew DeSilver, co-author of the study, expressed his surprise at these findings. He noted that the United States has a more developed tipping culture compared to other countries. But there is a lack of agreement on the matter. It's worth mentioning that Americans are more likely to tip for a sit-down meal than for any other service. According to Bankrate, 2/3 of U.S. adults always tip a server when they dine. The Pew survey also found that 81% of respondents always tip for a restaurant meal, a higher percentage than those who tip for haircuts, food delivery, buying a drink at a bar, or using a taxi or ride-hailing service. Etiquette expert Diane Gottsman recommends tipping 15% to 20% for sit-down restaurant service in 2023. However, studies suggest that tip fatigue has led to a decline in tip amounts recently. Toast data shows that the average nationwide tip at full-service restaurants fell to 19.4% of the total check in the second quarter of 2023, the lowest amount since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Additionally, Bankrate reports a 4 percentage point decrease in the share of people who always tip restaurant waitstaff from 2019 to 2022. Michael Lin, a professor at Cornell University School of Hotel Administration and an expert on consumer behavior and tipping, explains that people's willingness to tip, even in restaurant settings, is decreasing. He believes that Americans became more generous tippers in the early days of the pandemic as a way to support service workers and their employers. However, now they are becoming fed up with the practice, especially as they are asked to tip in circumstances and for services that traditionally weren't tipped, and the amounts they are asked to tip are higher. This trend of increasing tip prompts, also known as tip creep, coincides with a period of inflation caused by the pandemic. Household budgets have been affected, making it challenging for people to maintain higher tip amounts. One of the challenges in determining tip amounts is the lack of a centralized authority to guide norms. According to Pew, 77% of respondents consider service quality a major factor when deciding whether and how much to tip. However, Lin argues that service is not a strong predictor of consumer behavior. Instead, social approval from dining partners, waitstaff, and others plays a more significant role. Lin suggests that people are essentially buying approval with their tips. Only 23% of Pew survey respondents cited social pressure as a major factor in their tipping decisions. In conclusion, while traditional etiquette suggests tipping at least 15% to 20% for a sit-down meal, the Pew survey reveals that many Americans tip less than that. Factors such as tip fatigue, inflation, and the lack of a centralized authority contribute to this trend. Ultimately, social approval seems to be a stronger determinant of tipping behavior than service quality.